Welcome, everyone. We are just now starting our Texthelp webinar, Independence for Students equals Times for Teachers, getting the most out of Texthelp Tools. I am Nora Costa, and I will be one of the hosts and presenters for today. Just to let you know, all of the participants will be muted, but you have a chat window. So you'll be able to ask questions and get those answered in the chat window. And we'll be sharing these slides afterwards. Our panelists have been gracious enough to also be willing to connect with you afterwards as well. So if you check in your chat window, you should have a link to these slides in case you want to follow along there. So we will be recording this webinar, and we will be sending out a copy of that recording to all of you after the webinar as well. So welcome, everyone. And with that, we'll introduce ourselves. So I'm Nora Costa. I am the Regional Sales Director for Texthelp, coming to you from my home office in the San Francisco Bay Area. But I handle Texthelp on the West Coast. So that would be California, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Hawaii. And we'll have my partner, Greg Cristolo in Southern California, reach out. So you want to introduce yourself real quick, Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Nora. I know on my video it says Nora Costa, but my name is Greg Cristolo. I'm more of a Nora wannabe or Nora 2.0, but I am based out of Southern California. So I support districts in that area, and then really higher education in all of the West Coast. So happy to be here today.
Awesome. And then I know some of our panelists have already met her, and a few of you have already met her. We have a brand new colleague. We have brought on Corey Brooks to join our team here in Northern California. We've been so busy the last 6 months or so that we wanted to make sure that we could provide you all with the level of support that you deserve. So we brought on another text helper specifically for Northern California. So you want to say hello, Corey?
Hi, everyone. I am Corey Brooks. Definitely already obsessed with Texthelp. I live in Southern California, but I am a Northern California territory convert, and I'm super excited to be working in Northern California. So I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. And we have a pretty awesome group of panelists to join us today. And we had sort of envisioned this webinar as a way to kind of help our wonderful Texthelp community to connect. And in the past, Greg and I have hosted what we called Texthelp user groups. And we remember the good old days where we actually got together and spent a whole day sharing best practices and strategies and ideas and what happened when you did this and what if I tried this. So this picture is from right before COVID. This is December 2019 at Santa Clara County Office of Education. And I think some of you might have been joining us there. So we thought, we can't all be together that way, but maybe we can kind of share some best practices and ideas. So we are very much open to, speaking with our Texthelp community members and making sure that everybody's sharing the best ideas. So Corey is going to launch a poll here for our participants, just so we kind of have an idea which type of people are joining us. And so we will just give you guys just a moment here to answer that question. So what best describes your role? We're seeing some questions coming in. We got a lot of special ed folks here, which we love you guys. But we've got classroom teachers, we've got administrators, got some others. We'll give it just another second, but it looks like pretty much that poll is about done here. So you guys should then see the results of that poll. So you should be able to see that we do have a lot of special ed people here, but we're certainly not only here for special education, and anything that we can share, we definitely want to do that. So with that in mind, let us talk about why we're here. We wanted to share a little bit. We have users of Read and Write that are going to share a little bit how they support Read and Write in their district and how it helps their students and their teachers. And then we have some of our partners who are also going to talk about Equatio. I think we also have some that are going to talk about our Fluency Tutor program. So hopefully coming out of this webinar, you'll have some actionable ideas that you can take back to make things better in your districts. So today we have panelists from Beaverton School District in Oregon, West Contra Costa here in the Bay Area, Mountain View Los Altos Union High School District, Oakland Unified, and Palo Alto Unified. So thank you to our panelists. The format that we're going to be following is each panelist will have a few minutes to speak, and then we will answer questions that are posed in the chat window. So those of you that are sitting in on the webinar, joining in, please don't be shy about asking questions. We definitely want this to be back and forth, and our panelists have agreed to share their emails with you afterwards. So if something kind of struck your fancy, or you kind of wanted to know more about some of the strategies that the panelists are sharing with you, you will have a chance to connect with them afterwards as well. So with that in mind, I am going to introduce our first panelist, who is Kristine Mapper. She is a middle school ELD teacher out of Beaverton School District up in Oregon. So welcome, Kristine.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Kristine. I work in Beaverton. That's just outside Portland, Oregon. And I feel like I might arguably be the world's biggest fan of Read and Write. These are some kind of life-changing tools. And I have been using them to some extent since probably about 2014. It's been kind of a grassroots up model in my district. I started using it very much on my own in my little classroom. And over the years, eventually got more district buy-in until we have a district license and more widespread usage. So in those years, I've learned a few things about how to actually implement in ways that are effective, what does and doesn't work on the classroom level. So I'm going to talk about some of that today. So let's click.
Okay.
And one more click. Thank you. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about sort of my journey through Read and Write. This is a very abbreviated version of my story, but I discovered it when I had two very high need students in my ELD class, English Language Development. I'm working with kids from immigrant families. And I had these two students who came in as sixth graders who had been in our district since kindergarten. They'd been born and raised in the United States, and they had extremely severe dyslexia to where they were reading at a kindergarten level, despite many years of reading intervention. And they were very bright kids. You know, when input was audio, they could soak up everything. They'd remember everything. They were great participants in class. But the second it would turn to a reading or writing task, which of course is most of school, they would like put on their invisibility cloaks and just try to disappear. If I sat with them one-on-one and read things out loud and, you know, acted as scribes, they dictated their words, they would be very successful, but that's not a functional model of doing school because I have, you know, another whole class to teach. So very long story short, we enter Read and Write into their lives, and it changes their world. They are able to, for the first time, actually participate in their own education. They have a tool they can use. They have strategies they can use. They're able to access text without an adult hovering with them and, you know, holding their hand through things. And they found out that they're not stupid, and they thought they were. I know that because they told me so. So that's a very simple version of their story. But it also changed me forever as a teacher. And let's click one more time. Thank you. Because as I'm working with these two very high need students, I'm learning this Read and Write tools. I'm learning how the toolbar works, and I'm seeing other opportunities to use it with other students who I would call more of my tier 2 kind of yellow zone students. They weren't that high level of emergency where they weren't participating at all in school. They were just kind of stumbling along. Kids who had milder forms of dyslexia where they could read, but it was very difficult and slow and painful, so they were always behind. I'm thinking specifically of a student who did not have a disability, but she was a native Arabic speaker. She'd been learning English for, I think, 3 years at that point, and had become very fluent verbally, but she'd learned to read in a whole different alphabet. So her reading continued to be, I mean, kindergarten level, be generous. Like, she would ask me to spell literally every single word she wrote down, which was very frustrating for her, until I put read and write in front of her. And she was then able to engage with the text without a teacher hovering over her. And her reading and writing skills just took off. She used read and write pretty consistently for about a year. And then after that, started fading the use of it because she didn't need it as much anymore. Like, she was engaging meaningfully with text all day long. So she started to, become more independent in that way. And let's click one more time. Thank you. Now, the yellow and red zone students are all very well and good and lovely, but the real magic starts once I started taking the more green zone approach, when our school district purchased enough licenses that I could present it to everyone in my class, the UDL, Universal Design for Learning approach. And this is where the magic happens, because previously, all those yellow and red zone students, they knew that these tools were really helpful for them. They knew that they needed it, but they were very shy about using it. There was a lot of shame and stigma because middle school kids are just insecure by nature, and they don't want to look different than their peers. So once it was presented to everybody and it became just a normal thing that everyone could use whenever they wanted to, suddenly that shame and that stigma was gone. Kids who needed it the most were comfortable using it when they needed to, and other students also benefited from the tools that were available to them. There is something in read and write for literally every kid. Like, I don't care how high of an achiever you are, there are tools that will help you in your education, which I could talk more about, but instead, I'm just going to click through to the next slide. And thank you. So how did I actually go about implementing read and write in a very UDL approach once I had the district license and was able to give it to all students? I start out my first week of school, first or second day if possible, by integrating it right into what I would do anyway. In that first week or two, or first couple days of school, like many teachers, I'll do some sort of activity where we're all brainstorming classroom norms, like rules for the classroom, or maybe a get to know you game, where any of those is normal activities you do, where as a teacher, I might be writing the kids' ideas on the board or typing them into a document. I do that activity the same way I always would, except that instead of writing on the board or typing physically into a document, I have a Google Doc open and I use read and write to dictate all the students' ideas, and we write our list that way. And I don't draw any attention to it. I just do it as a very normal part of my practice. And as we finish writing the list, I tell the kids, all right, we've got some great ideas here. Let's review what we have. And I click back to the beginning of the list and use read and write to have it read out loud. So now we can all hear the computer reading the text to us. I draw no attention to it at all, but all the kids are going, whoa, that's really cool. Can we use that too? And I say, of course you can. And it is now established from day one that this is a very normal thing. There's nothing like weird or abnormal or no stigma attached to it. It is just one of the tools that we have in our classroom, and even the teacher uses it. Let's click again. When I'm introducing the tools, because over the next few weeks, I'll start, teaching the kids actually how to use them. I make a point of always talking about it in terms of preferences. I'll talk about learning styles and how you like to learn. I try not to talk about it in terms of needs, because again, it makes kids insecure. And I would never say, if you can't read this, use this tool. Or if reading's hard for you, use this tool. Instead, I'll say something along the lines of, some people like to listen while they read. Some of us learn better through our ears. Some of us learn better through our eyes. You do what you like to do, what you feel helps you learn to read best. Some students want to listen as they read some of the time. Some students do it most of the time. Some do it almost none of the time. Do what makes your brain happy. And I make sure to keep my language very value neutral. It's not that good readers do this and bad readers do that. It's just we all have different brains that like to do things different ways. Find out what your brain likes. So I just, again, tries to keep it just normal. And then I will throughout the year reinforce these tools because, especially in middle school, we spend a lot of time battling learned helplessness. Kids who just are not used to using their own strategies and tools to try and solve their own problems. And so every time I give my kids a reading assignment, if they're going to read an article, part of my directions is a reminder. All right, you guys, if you get to a word that you don't know, what do you do? And they all know the procedure. You listen to the word, you use the dictionary tool, the picture dictionary tool. If you're bilingual, you use the translator. And once you've used all of those tools, if you still have a question, then you can ask me and I will happily help you. But until they've used all those tools, I am pretty firm about refusing to answer a question or engage. They've got to try it on their own first, and I will walk them through those strategies. Same thing with spelling. I will not spell a word for you until you've at least tried to use either the dictation or the word prediction. You've got these tools, you've got to use them. And I think that is most of what I have prepared. I could talk all day long, but you don't want to hear me talk all day long. But if anybody has questions, I would love to answer them.
So for our participants, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat window and Corey will ask those questions for you. I know I could listen to Kristine talk all day long. I've been lucky enough to have some great classroom visits with her. She's always got really good ideas to share. And if you don't know, she has some really cool books that she has written.
Well, a cool book.
A cool book and a pretty great TED Talk. So all of those are fun things to look at. So we'll give this just a moment here to see if any of our participants have questions that they wanted to ask. Right. Looks like we're maybe not as much right now. So thank you for joining us, Kristine. And again, just want to make sure that the rest of the participants know that, we kind of see this as an ongoing community. So if you come up with questions that you want to ask later, we are more than happy to make sure that those get answered as well. So our next panelist is Sandy Oliver from West Contra Costa Unified. Good afternoon, Sandy.
Hello, hi, I'm Sandy, and right now my role is Assistive Technology Coach or Specialist in West Contra Costa Unified School District, which is a very large and diverse school district. I'm a former middle school language arts teacher, and I also worked for the California Technology Assistance Project, so I have a lot of experience in school reform and all kinds of stuff, and I kind of fell into this role as an Assistive Technology Specialist, and was trying to help kids bridge to curriculum and all these kinds of things. And just Texthelp came into my life at the right time. I think I also been working with Texthelp since 2014, right, Nora? Like right from the beginning, I started off with, I think 150 licenses as a little pilot project. And I spent a lot of time trying to convince people that buying all this different software and products was crazy because no one had the same thing. And I had the luxury of working at a very well-funded international school for 3 years in Hong Kong and learned that less is more, even in schools that have funds. It's better to use less products and know them well than to have a million different things from the IT side and from the teacher side. And that just really resonated with me with even schools that have the luxury of buying anything. West Contra Costa, we don't have the luxury. And so I'm like, why are we buying like 4 different text readers? Like what is going on? And I can't even figure out how to use this one. And then there were like 3 different programs for dictation and I was going crazy. So started with a small pilot and really reached out to what other AT people were doing. So if you want to go to the next slide, this is kind of my, for me, it's all about the accommodations. I do work mostly with students with IEPs and 504s, but kind of like what Kristine was saying too, there's those tiers of students and it's really for everyone. But my population is students who really need accommodations so that they can access learning. And just Texthelp is right there and helps, and it has this, I call it a toolbox, and I'm always saying, like, you have your tool belt, which tool are you going to pull out, what do you need help with, and trying to help the kids really self-advocate. So I focus a lot on what's hard, what do you need help with, do we have that accommodation in your IEP or your 504 plan, and what tools are going to help you learn what you want to learn and get your output out so that the teacher knows that you know that, and just trying to simplify it. So on the next slide, I just shared, like, I am really working with my case managers in our district around writing better accommodations, and not mentioning Texthelp, but you could look at these three and you know what tool I'm talking about with the, because we're not supposed to mention products in IEPs, but very generally, like, what are you posting to Google Classroom and how the heck is this student going to access it? So then, you know, we're working with PDF Reader, or, you know, trying to take notes or prepare students for standardized tests and highlighting and things like that. Is that if you're going to expect them to do that, you know, in the classroom and on a standardized test, that should be an accommodation. So this has really been kind of my passion project right now, is getting people to really understand that the accommodations need to match the students' needs, and then do we have to provide the tools that allow them to do that. Word prediction is probably the one I always say, like, word prediction is for like those special students. It's like a small percentage, but for the kids that like it, it like just opens up this crazy door. I didn't show an example here. If you get this slideshow later, there's a link here with like more just my brainstorm of accommodations, but text to speech and speech to text are like no brainers. Those are just my, like, those are my magic makers, and everyone should have access to them. And I'm not at a district license with the toolbar. I wish I were, but once you have a large district, you're also talking about more money and you need to get buy-in from other departments. So we run, I think everyone at Texthelp is tech support knows me. I call it my grassroots toolbar project. I manage and add the toolbar to students one by one manually. I have 2,000 licenses and I manage it on a Google spreadsheet, and use the old school admin tool because it's the only way I can do it. And I wouldn't do it. I'd rather do that than not have it. But ideally, it would be much better if I could have it on the whole domain and all students would have it, because it's great for our English language learners and just everyone. So let's see. I kind of have some random thoughts here. Let's go to the next slide. Jumped. Okay, so my big thing is that there has to be lots of training. I think we put lots of things on our students' machines and push things out to Clever and push extensions, and it's like, oh, what's that? Where'd that come from? There's a little purple thing up there. So what I did early on, gosh, a long time ago, right when Google Classroom came out, long before distance learning or anyone was using it, I am a Google trainer too, and I created Google Classroom for my workshops because I was thinking, how am I going to share worksheets with them and things that Nora and I would collaborate on? And then I thought, ooh, and then hidden thing, they're learning classroom. So it was like dual purpose. Like, so they had to come into the workshop, figure out how the heck, how to log into Classroom, how to get that, how to open that. But then I could put the link to the free teacher sign, you know, the sign up sheet and all the things. And here's the link to the extension. So I could force them into using those things. And it felt and looked a lot like it would look for kids if they were using Google Classroom. Didn't work. I mean, I'm not a Seesaw expert, but we do use Seesaw in our K2 population. But Google Classroom is our biggest classroom, you know, whatever we want to call it. I mean, this is like kind of like classroom teacher websites. Again, I've been a technology coach for a long time. And so this is just so darn easy. And so I have multiple classrooms now. So not only do I have a read and write, this is my biggest one, but I also just have a math one for kind of Equatio and talking about technology and math. And then other, I use Learning A to Z. So I have these different classrooms so the teachers don't have to search through emails from me for that tutorial or things like that. They just always know that they can go to the classroom. I try and post like an article or a blog, or if there's an updated tutorial video. It's not super active. It's mostly me pushing it out, but at least sometimes there's comments and sometimes people will write me and say, that was great, thanks. So that's been kind of successful, and I definitely some other departments in my district have started using Classroom as a way to share materials with other teachers. So I wanted to share that. What else do I have? What's my next? So again, my biggest thing is probably the biggest challenge, or one of the most common IEP goals is written output. A struggle for students is written output, our struggling writers, whether it's dysgraphia or not identified as that. So really using the talk and type or the speech to text tool, and not just throwing them to the toolbar and saying, here, you have this, but really teaching them how to dictate is something that's kind of been eye-opening for me, even, and making adults play with it, because no paraprofessional or teacher is going to be able to help a student if they're not comfortable using it. So that's like such a huge one. And I'm always just like, you guys are all talking to your phones. Like, why can't you talk to your computer, right? It's like, what's the difference? And you're listening to your phones. And it's all just so awesome now because assistive technology is built into so many things. I mean, just in Google Docs now, it's got the little like word prediction that is there that's grayed out. So it's just so nice that the kids don't have to be embarrassed anymore. Because when I first started in this role, it was like a desktop in the corner, and like it had co-writer on it, and if they wanted to use it, they just had to go over there, and that was the only place, and they didn't have it at home. You know, we didn't have Wi-Fi. Contra Costa is pretty far behind the times. We just went one-to-one recently with Chromebooks. We just got Wi-Fi not that long ago. We did not have internet connectivity in our classrooms not very long ago. So this has all just been super exciting. So that document there, Nora, if you just want to click on that, I learned about this document probably through the Quiet listserv, which I follow, but this is a great document that kind of just walks through how to teach kids how to use their voice to write. And it has some really practical things. And so now really when I'm working with a kid, I'm like, say it to me, let's think about it. The mic's not on yet. Like, let's practice, then let's say it, you know what I mean? Ways to make it successful, because, and it doesn't work for everyone. There's kids that have speech impediments and there's kids that have strong accents. It doesn't work, but the majority of the students, I could, tears to my eyes, kids who didn't write, and working with them in some of my mild to moderate classes were writing three-page essays with inserted graphics, like just to the point that it's just unbelievable. And these were kids that could not write a sentence. So, I mean, I know it works, but it takes time. It's not just because they have it, they know how to use it. And that's even more so for the adults in the room or the IEP team if you're working with special education students.
So for those of you who are watching, there is a link in the slides if you're looking at the slides, and we'll make sure that you get these links like after the webinar as well. And
that's the most updated version of that. So I think it's the third or fourth version that I've come across. So they just updated that document in 2020 because it was like, I think there was one that was like 2014 and there was a 16, and then this is the 2020. So they put some new resources in there that are great. It's not, I don't use it all, but that little graphic to the right is my favorite. So I'm always like with my learning center teachers or my lab teachers, if they have a lab, make some of these and laminate it and put them up next to the computer for the kids that are using it, or just make a little one and put it on their desk and help them get that quick write out or that draft. I always say just let it vomit it out, and then we'll clean it up later. That's Miss Sandy's term. So that's just I'm just in love with speech to text. I think you skipped one. Go back one more. And then the other thing is the text reader. So I just feel like I've tried a lot of different products. We have Chromebooks. They do have a text reader. I just think the quality of the text reader on the read and write toolbar is so much better and consistent. So even with my students that don't have the premium toolbar, I do encourage students to use the free toolbar so that they can have that text reader. They don't get all the other bells and whistles, but it's just seeing a kid who can't read and then showing them, okay, here's the handout, and then here I'm going to listen to it, and like seeing their eyes, and it's just, and it seems simple, but a lot of people don't know how to use a text reader. They really don't. And the double highlighting, a lot of the other like text readers don't have the double highlighting, so the kid can't follow it. You can make the font really big and the text reader still follows the size of that font. You can double space it. There's just so many little accessible tricks that we all have already. You don't need anything special and you don't need to buy anything more. But just showing a kid there, just changing the default font of a Google Doc to 18 dyslexia font. So every time they go to write, that's how big it is. And then showing them how they can listen to what they wrote. I had an experience with a teacher where he was like, oh my gosh, my kids never edit. And all of them just made 3 changes, listening to their own writing. So I'm big on using this in the writing process, and that you can't turn that in until you listen to it twice is my rule. So that's my love of the text reader is just awesome on the toolbar. And then those are the other products from Texthelp. I keep Fluency Tutor. I'm trying to really work with Fluency Tutor. My elementary teachers they have Read Naturally, they have Sunday, they have a lot of other things that our admin is throwing at them. So I'm trying to implement Fluency Tutor with my secondary kind of resource, because you tend to have less intervention as you go up in the grades as a tutorial teacher in high school. So I'm trying to focus on that, although there's no reason that I'm limiting to that. It's just one less tool that I'm asking someone to learn. So I have a limited number of Fluency Tutor licenses that I'm trying to really work with those teachers who really are working on fluency in their tutorial or their mild to moderate intervention classes. So that's kind of, and I wish that were bigger, but that's as big as I can handle, because again, I'm the one managing that. And then with Equatio, a same kind of thing. I'm trying to work with math teachers. It has to do with the adults in the room have to know how to use it before it makes any sense to put even that extension on a kid's Google account. And I'm struggling to get people on board with this, but with the new integration with the math space, and especially with distance learning and seeing what was happening with online math learning, which was frightening in some cases during the last year and a half, people were really jumping to technology. So I'm hoping that I can get more interest. And I'm really, with this one, I'm kind of going outside of special ed, and I'm really going to my high school math teachers that are really great, and asking them to, try it out and see how they would use it for their high school students. So that's kind of a work in progress. I have a Google Classroom that's just kind of like a little personal learning, like a little learning community just around math and accessibility. And so I'm trying to do some adult learning there. I think that's all I have, right? Yeah, I could go on. I'm a big Texthelp fan too. I should probably wear a t-shirt.
Sandy's always got great ideas, and she's really had a lot of success with kind of modeling the classroom environment to special ed teachers as they learn to use the tools, so that they can kind of be in driving from the student seat, right? I think that's been really a big part of your success, Sandy. I think it's been really powerful. So if anybody has questions for Sandy, we'll give it just a moment or two here to see if you have questions that you want to ask in the chat window, and we will have Sandy answer those. But yes, she's been very creative about how she kind of gets the word out for the teachers. And also, I think because we've been with you for a long time, we've seen some movement with the teachers as they get more familiar with the tools and more comfortable with the tools. It's been fun to see teachers come back, right, and get a little bit more proficient. Okay.
I can't see the chat, so if there's any questions, will you tell me? I don't know what I did to my screen, but
no, we will for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
All right.
No
so
question.
Corey, no questions.
Well.
Yeah. All right. So thank you very much, Sandy. Let's see who our next speaker is. It's Stacy Springer from Oakland Unified. So thanks for jumping in, Stacy.
Hi. Yes. Thanks, Nora. So I'm the lead AT specialist for Oakland Unified. I've come by trade as a special ed teacher, occupational therapist, and then assistive technology specialist for the past, 15 or plus years. I started working with Texthelp through South Carolina Department of Education back in 2010. And when I came on to Oakland in 2014, I think it's on the next slide, possibly. I came in and they started looking at our district with technology, and our curriculum coordinator at the time started looking at tech funds, additional funds available for Texthelp licenses that were targeted solely at our mild mod SDC programs. And so I'm going to talk about Texthelp. I use it with students all the time and do direct AT assessments and so on, but like I'm kind of telling a story of like our district's rollout administratively, so a little bit different in how we've kind of grown and bumps along the way, so to speak. So we started with just targeting the mild mod programs, and the whole focus was for our students that were struggling readers and writers to be able to have access to grade level text and materials. And so that winter, 2014, we started with only 500 seats. And then the following year, we increased it. So it was at first just a number of SDCs. Then we increased it to all of our mild mod SDCs. And so with Oakland, we have, which I don't need you to advance the slide, but we have over 80 schools. We're our own SELPA, so very large school district. And so some of the positives of how we started was that we got read and write, and we were able to use it not only for our mild mod SDC students, but also we had extra licenses to use as a result of an assistive technology assessment, that we would not have to worry of how we're going to provide these different tools and resources for students. Some of the negatives of only buying those amount of seats for our district, I won't say this is for everyone, but for our district, was that we had to have those classrooms and students manually install read and write for each user, because we couldn't push it out, for everyone. And so we would go to classrooms or work with students and be like, you have read and write, and let me show you all about it. And then they would be like, but, we would have to walk them through the install, and just, I don't think that was ever anticipated as being a barrier, but it actually was a really large barrier for a lot of our teachers and classrooms that we didn't have. And still, really, we have a very small tech department. So we did not have a large tech presence that was individually pushing this out for every student. We literally would walk through, and sometimes myself or the AT team would literally log in student by student and install this for every student, just so that the classroom would have access to it, so that we would eliminate that barrier. And then we also, if students changed or moved or added, we had to then submit an individual help desk ticket to like add read and write for this student, do this. And so it was like all of this initial stage of just getting it set up, let alone having them to use it. And so, that's kind of where we started. And then, in 2016, we took the jump into a district-wide license. And honestly, there was various discussions about this, but what we started to look at is that if we purchased individual licenses for all of our students with disabilities or students in special education, it ended up being the same cost as a district-wide license. And so the cost breakdown, in order to justify why we would go to that, in and of itself was justification. Then we also just slightly came in right before Dyslexia Law AB 1369 came in, which said, you've better have a plan for supporting students with dyslexia. So, which was like, wow, we actually have read and write as an accommodation, to support students with dyslexia. So that was really great timing. And then, another thing was, if we have this district-wide license, then it's just going to be available for all students, and it'll be pushed out for a whole domain, our whole Google domain. So it would eliminate that, along with our district has a significant population of, more than 50% students that speak another language than English at home, 30% English language learners, and we're at 15% special ed service eligibility. So it was like, yes, this is great for special ed students, but this is great for our whole district as a whole. And so we were very fortunate enough to be able to move forward with a district-wide license. So some of the things that I learned, or in hindsight looking back to, are, one is that it actually originated from special education, and we kind of held that, and that I think was kind of a barrier in the beginning, and that could be a very district-wide thing, but I think that happens often, is we're looking at all these tools to support students with special education, yet it really should be a, you know, a tier 1 UDL like MTSS support. And so then it was when we went district-wide with the license, it was also difficult to get district-wide support in order to roll it out. Some of the people in central office that made some of the decisions to go district-wide also turned over trying to connect like the tech department with special ed and central district, like all of those things, and trying to like let our ELL department know about it, let, you know, all these different departments know that we have this license, because as many do probably, like we have very little PD days. And so it's like, we have like 2 PD days, you know, a year in order to, that was my dog. I apologize. It's always happens. It never fails. And so trying to get the word out to teachers about like getting them for PDs is like, you know, extremely difficult bidding war almost. And then also trying to get principal time, letting principals know, you know, it can't just be an email, you know, it can't just be, you know, another, you know, video that's forwarded. And so these were all really difficult as far as trying to get the word out. And so really what we ended up doing was a lot of grassroots support or implementation. So our team, our AT team, essentially provided a lot of school-based trainings. We would get in through SPED or through the resource specialist or the technology person at the school site and say, hey, instead of us just training this teacher, can we take 30 minutes of your, you know, staff, faculty time, so on. And so we would do that. We also offered many different PD days. Nora would do PD days. We did PD days. But again, a lot of these are sometimes optional, and trying to like really it was also still very targeted towards special education. And then the other thing that we did was every school had a tech lead. And so we trained those tech leads on how to use, about read and write and how to use it. Some of the things, I don't know if it's on the next slide or not, or if that's it. Yes. So some of the lessons learned and things that is, I don't have it's not sustainable for me to go in and do a lesson for every classroom. But what I ended up learning is that sometimes the teachers ended up being more of a barrier of using read and write than the students. And that when I did go into a classroom and do a lesson on read and write, the students right away knew how to use it in a general education or mild mod type classroom. They figured out the toolbar, they knew how to do stuff. So it was also like, we need to find a way how to reach the students sometimes and not just be waiting on the teachers. Because if the students knew that it was there, they could actually figure it out. And then fortunately, I would say, honestly, COVID really propelled us forward in the push to the fact that we already had read and write. And we're trying to, prior to COVID, I know Nora and I and our tech coordinator was meeting and trying to figure out how do we target different schools and different pockets of what's not being used. And then COVID happened, and then it was just a demand of how do I get access for read writable PDFs? How do I get access for students to be able to use this? And all of a sudden, naturally that became a big push. We also did a lot of recorded webinars and things, and also again, kind of with COVID, all of webinars and Zooms and technology resources became like a central hub for people to be able to access. So I would say that it's definitely a silver lining in all of it. And, you know, I love some of the other ideas from Sandy with like the Google Classroom and stuff like that. Our future plans are really trying to find ways to embed resources for teachers to access easily, and train our now called distance learning leads, essentially our tech leads at every school, on how to access the materials and support. But the last thing I would say is, as a sidebar for assistive technology, having Read and Write as a district-wide license really has shifted the number of assistive technology assessments that we do, and the way in which we're able to provide AT and AAC services. AAC not as related, but essentially both of them we provide in an MTSS model. And so we're able to talk with families and IEP teams and teachers and say, you know, you don't need an assistive technology assessment in order to be able to access word prediction and text-to-speech and voice typing and all of this. Like, let me show you what we have. Let me help you how to use it. And then if something isn't working or you need a lot of help, we can look at doing an assessment. But we have all these tier 1 supports. So while we still have to do assessments, of course, we're not going to get away from that, but it's definitely provided all of these tools available that we can then just support teachers and teams and students on. And I think that's it.
That is awesome news to hear, and definitely, you know, the last thing that we want is for an assessment to be a barrier between the student getting what they need and not, right?
Yeah.
Why not just make sure they have what they need?
Yeah, so I don't, there wasn't a question necessarily. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
But we did have a statement from Dan O'Hollern. The biggest challenge facing SPED students, EL students, developmentally delayed students are these soft skills that keep them participating and the general education classes at grade level. And
Very true.
Yeah.
I would say very, very true. One of the things that that I know that we've looked at with our partners in Oakland Unified over the years are like ways to integrate Read and Write into some of the existing strategies. At one point, way back in 2014, there was a writing program that was using pocket charts, and we figured out how to basically take the information that was going into these pocket charts and use the Read and Write highlighters to sort of duplicate that in a digital platform. We joked about having a pocket chart bonfire at one point, I think.
Yeah, and I would have to say too, our district, I mean, I can only speak to our district, but we face, you know, besides the makeup of our school district is we also face I don't know what the recent numbers are, but we, prior to COVID, I would say are on average a 30% teacher turnover. And so when you know, how do you provide, you know, long-term PD plans for staff with that high of a turnover? And so that's always been a big barrier as well, in addition to just letting people know that it's out there.
Yeah. And we do have another question from Sarah Sahlberg. These issues are exactly what my district and I are wrestling with. Very timely. Thank you, speakers and Texthelp. Any suggestions on how I can continue the reading about or participating in the conversation, blogs, Twitter groups, etc.?
I would say, as far as AT related blogs and what Sandy said, the Quiet Listserv, which is QIAT, Quality Indicators for Assistive Technology, is one of the, I mean, best, most used AT listservs nationally. So it's a great resource for asking questions about tools, asking questions about implementation, about students, you know, what do I do, from, hey, what do you guys use? Who uses Texthelp? Who uses this? You know, it's literally, I would say that's probably the best as far as, and the most diverse with various backgrounds, therapists, teachers, vendors, everything.
I'd also like to just make a plug for Gail Bowser and Denise DeCoste. They do a changing, they do an online class for AT, and then also Chris Bouguet has a book on assistive technology. So those are people that I've reached out to for advice on how other districts are doing it. The changing role of assistive technology, building sustainability or something. Gail and Denise have been doing those classes online, and that was super influential for me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And all of those opportunities will come across Quiet too. So yeah, which is really, really great. So
you guys were absolutely reading my mind. That was the first thing that I would have said was Quiet. And for those of you that are joining us from afar, we will make sure to send out links to all of this for you so that you can access it later. But yeah, big fans of the Quiet listserv over here at Texthelp too. So that is a huge service that they provide. Awesome. Any other questions for Stacy? All right. Well, thank you very much for participating, Stacy. We've got 2 more speakers. We'll move on.
Just one more thing, Nora, as well. Just the UDL. Any UDL links would be helpful as well.
Okay. So we've got some great links that we can share also for Universal Design for Learning. Texthelp has a pretty extensive reference piece on Universal Design for Learning. Those of you who know us know that we've partnered with CAST Forever. We'll also send a link directly to the CAST website. I know there's a online certification that you can take for free with CAST, and like a real low cost one, and they've got webinars going all the time. So anything that anybody needs help with UDL, we can definitely point you in the right direction. Good question. All right. So joining us from Mountain View Los Altos High School District is Sharon Redner and Marcey Winawer. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And we are from the Mountain View Los Altos High School District, which is in Mountain View, California. Our district houses about 4,200 high school students. And we, our former education director, special education director, brought in Read and Write in April of 2020. And as math person, I requested we also have Equatio. So we started out with a lot of power. We had a district license, and we were able to push out the extensions to all student and teacher school accounts. So we started out very strong with the access. My name is Marcey Winawer. I taught math and computer science before joining our instructional support team, where my roles include curriculum development and educational technology support. And I want to turn it over to Sharon.
Hi, my name is Sharon Redner, and Nora, if you can change slides. So I am a speech language pathologist at one of the high schools in Mountain View, Los Altos High School District, and the assistive technology specialist. And I want to say that it is truly wonderful to have a district-wide license. I started with Mountain View this August, and the district I was in prior to that, we had access to Read and Write for about 3 years, and started the way Sandy and Stacy did, and they are still at that point at this time, pushing it out one at a time. And it is much easier for all involved if it's a district license. So if districts can't afford that, I would highly recommend doing it in that way. As a speech language pathologist in a high school district, I found a lot of my students had goals looking at a word and trying to determine the best definition for it for the passage and creating grammatically correct sentences. So I have been introducing Read and Write. We went back into school on April 19th, so pretty much almost my entire first year in this district has been through Zoom. So introducing this through Zoom was interesting. What I would do is have my students talk me through the tools, since we couldn't all share screens, and talk me through what it is that they wanted and go that way with it. We do have the district license. I did find that a lot of my students wouldn't have the little purple puzzle piece up in the corner. So I learned to talk them through the little gray puzzle piece with the extension and pinning it to their toolbar. So that's something, if the kids are saying they don't have it and the district is saying you do have it, it's probably in extensions and it hasn't been pinned. So that was something to work through. The slide I put together here are the tools that I found that my students liked the best this year. Granted, it was through distance learning, but the kids did have access to play around with it. I have one student who really enjoys the masking tool. He uses nothing else, but he swears by the masking tool, and it says that helped him a lot. So I decided to set it up, you know, it's read and write. So the top bar is the reading toolbars that my kids are using. So we worked on the hover tool, so you just bring the mouse over it and hover, and then it will start reading. Also the dictionary, a few people talked about that. We don't use the picture dictionary because it is a high school district, and I'd say a lot of the words that the kids don't understand, there isn't a picture for it, and you cannot add pictures in there, which is fine. And I think a lot of my kids would be kind of insulted by using a picture dictionary anyways. We learned how to do the play tool, so having it read to them. And I forgot the name of the woman who came from Beaverton, but same thing, I have the students use the tool that works best for them, and some kids like to listen to it, some kids want to read it themselves, some kids want to do both. So we talked about the play tool. We also worked with the web search tool. I talked to them about that tool for research, but we also are looking into, when we're talking about idioms and things like that, you can't look up an idiom in the dictionary. So we've been highlighting the idiom, then using the web search tool and going out onto the internet to have it defined for them what that idiom means. So that's one tool that we've been using, a little different than I had been taught to do it, but it's working really nicely. The masking tool, Nora, I think you were the one that taught me this one, but either using it to mask out the text on top or bottom of a paragraph, or changing it and doing it the exact opposite and just making a nice line to underline the sentence you're reading. So for the kids who have difficulty keeping on a line, they can have that line almost like a digital ruler just following down with them. So that has worked really nicely. I have a few students that are speaking different languages as native speakers. I have one student who speaks Portuguese and one student who speaks Spanish as their first languages. So we've been working with Translate with them. And it was interesting to go through, and I showed them how to use Portuguese first, and I had it read, and the student looked at me and went, I'm from Portugal. I mean, I'm not from Portugal, I'm sorry. I'm from Brazil, and it's speaking Portuguese. And we are having an echo here. So we went through, and that was just something to learn. If you're doing Spanish, you know, is it Mexican Spanish? Is it Spain Spanish? Portuguese, is it Portugal Portuguese, or Brazilian Portuguese? It definitely makes a difference, and something to work on with your students and know exactly which country they're coming from. And the best tool that I absolutely adore is the Simplify tool. A lot of my kids say, but we have ad block. Well, yes, we do, but for some reason mine doesn't work most of the time. So the Simplify tool takes out all the advertisements, it takes out all the hyperlinks. Sometimes it leaves a few pictures, and then we can go in there and read using the play tool, but it gets rid of all that visual clutter that the kids have to deal with if they're reading an article. When I do trainings for teachers, I always go into Wikipedia and I do the Great Wall of China, which is right here. So, and when that comes up, there are so many links, and it's very difficult for our students, and they might go and click on something, or they're doing hovering and all of a sudden they've selected a hyperlink. So the Simplify tool gets rid of all of that and just lets them read nicely that way. The Bookshare logo is in here because for those of your students who qualify for Bookshare, it is an absolutely fantastic tool. It has an absolutely horrendous reading that goes with voice that goes with it. So I always have my students open up Bookshare and then open up Read and Write and have Read and Write read to them. And then they have access for all of their textbooks and any of their core literature. They have access to all the tools that they would have had in Read and Write within the books they're reading from Bookshare. So that's really nice. And then I'm
glad you gave a shout out, Sharon, to Bookshare. And I'm guessing we have some Bookshare users already on the webinar. If you're not sure about Bookshare and you want to find out more about it, we can definitely share that. I have a Bookshare cheat sheet, and I will make sure that you guys get access to that after the webinar.
And a real quick thing just to know is you do need to qualify for Bookshare. We don't need to qualify for Read and Write. It's just how our districts decide to buy licenses, but you do need to qualify for Bookshare with a print disability, and that will be on the information Nora gives you. our writing tools. The Check-A tool, I like to tell the kids that they need to go through there, and that's going to help them clean up any spelling errors and any grammatical errors. And then I tell the teachers, so if students use this, then the teachers should only have to grade for content. They shouldn't have to be going in there grading for spelling and grading for grammar, which at the high school level, I'm sure would be very helpful to them. Prediction, I find it works best for our kids that have orthopedic impairments, so they can type a couple of letters, go through, and then they're going to be able to choose the word. So these are students who may not be able to use the dictation portion due to some dysarthria. So the word prediction is going to help them decrease keystrokes. Most of the kids prefer the talk and type versus prediction. However, if they're in the classroom and they don't want to be talking, prediction's a nice thing to go through. You just need to be able to spell phonetically. So you need to be a phonetic speller for that tool to work well for you. But if you are a phonetic speller, it does work really nicely. The playback tool, again, so once you either have typed your paper or you've dictated your paper to listen to it, and one thing I tell the students is a lot of times we're typing and we skip those small words. We think they're in there, and then when we read them to ourselves, we fill in the us and the does and those type of words that actually aren't really there. So to have it read by the computer, it's going to actually read to you what you really typed. So then you can go, oh yeah, I missed that word. Because in our brain, if we know it's there, we frequently put it in for us. So it's a nice tool to help us with our editing. Again, the web search tool in this instance here would be good for any research you're doing. It kind of helps the kids not go down that crazy rabbit hole. So if we are doing something on the Great Wall, the student can just highlight Great Wall, hit the web search tool, and think everything that comes up is going to come up on Great Wall. Granted, if there's a Chinese restaurant in the area that is the Great Wall, that will come up too, but it will keep the students a little more focused than just kind of going out onto Google on their own. And then the last one is the talk and type tool, which is the dictation tool, and everybody talked about that is just absolutely fantastic. One thing to know is that even the most clear speaker amongst us, it's about 95% accurate, isn't it? So we will always need to go back and listen and edit. I tell the students when they start, I want them to just go sentence by sentence, just to make sure, and then we go paragraph by paragraph. I am a fairly clear speaker. I'm a speech language pathologist. I had a problem with my wrist. I dictated an entire report. I went back and listened to it, and there was 5% that it did not get. It changed it, and I had no idea. I couldn't remember what it was that I had wanted to say. I just knew that was wrong. So it's going to be the same thing with our students. So we need to just work with them on editing sooner rather than later, so what they want to say is in their brains. And that's about it for read and write, and Marcey's now going to talk about Equatio.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. So when we brought Equatio in, again, you know, we kind of went the other direction where the extensions showed up on everybody's toolbar before people knew what they were. So that was fun. And the Equatio editor was, our target was all students and teachers. So I started out by going to our 2 comprehensive high school math departments and showing the teachers the Equatio editor, walking them through a demonstration. I did something similar to what Sandy did, where I had all kinds of training materials available in a Google Classroom. This was April, don't forget. So this was right when we started to realize we weren't going back to school. So there was a lot going on. I would say most teachers, the feedback was we're going to stick with using math type in Word or our Google Doc editors or whatever we had before. So I didn't get a lot of buy-in at first. However, distance learning changed a lot of things, and we realized we needed a more powerful math editor. Our students were really struggling to submit their math. So we started taking a look at Equatio again. And the other thing that really pushed Equatio was that our district brought in the Canvas LMS, and Equatio integrates really well in Canvas. So the teachers that were creating quizzes and assignments from within Canvas found Equatio super helpful. I don't work directly with students, but what I did is I used, if you're familiar with the Nearpod presentation platform, I used Nearpod to create an asynchronous learning opportunity for students to learn about Equatio. So it took them through different activities. I put some videos in there. So that was available for students so that they could learn how to use some of the Equatio commands and features. So similar to what Sharon did, I just wanted to show you some of the different tools that our students and teachers have been using. Equatio is a lot more than a math editor. It is so powerful, and I would suggest, if you haven't rolled this out yet, is if you do it in pieces, because there's an awful lot in there, and just making sure people have time to use the features in a robust way before going on to the next. So I highlight the ones that we really enjoy so far the most. The prediction editor, there's a Desmos graph option in there so that you can actually embed a graph into your math. There's a mobile app. So our students, were doing their math work and then having to take a picture and upload it. While using Equatio, they easily open up their app on their phone, take a picture, and it uploads immediately to their Equatio environment. So that's been really, really awesome. Now, I will tell you, I think the big game changer is when Equatio made itself available in images. So now you can use Equatio anywhere you can insert an image. So our teachers have been using Google Jamboards quite heavily in distance learning. So I thought this was a game changer. Being able to use the Equatio editor with Jamboards was a huge, huge plus for us. Also, teachers that are using Google Forms are automatically see the Equatio editor come up when they're creating the form, and also the students will see it when they're answering questions. Moving forward, I want to definitely get more eyes on Equatio. I also want to make sure our science teachers have an opportunity to see it. Equatio offers formula prediction for chemistry. So it's a powerful, powerful tool for science teachers also. There's also a feature called Math Space, which, if you haven't seen it before, if you can find a webinar where Texthelp is talking about it, it's a very powerful platform where you can create math lessons, push them out to students. The student does a lesson, pushes it back to the teacher. You can do all kinds of things and kids can manipulate kind of like they do on a Jamboard. I haven't had a chance to roll this out very well with teachers yet, but that's something that I'm hoping to do in the future. Thank you.
Awesome, Marcey. Yeah, we're excited to get Math Spacey with you as well. So your timing was very interesting for bringing in Equatio, right? It was a kind of like pie in the sky. This will be a really cool thing to do, and then who knew COVID was going to hit, right? Phew, different. So do we have any questions for Sharon and Marcey from the audience?
No questions so far. I've been.
Okie doke. And remember,
one more thing.
Yeah, you bet.
I just want to say that the whole Texthelp team, they are so supportive. If you go on the Texthelp site, there's learning through videos, through PDFs, on basically any question you might have regarding either of these or any of their products. You can earn badges. I earned all my badges last summer. So it might help with some teachers to, if you get X amount of badges, you get a Starbucks card or something like that for training with teachers. If you go on to the options button within Read and Write, there's a help button in there, and I get information back really quickly. And then just as a final, Nora is just absolutely fantastic, and Corey, I'm sure you will be fantastic as well. But just giving any information that you need on any kind of support you need on these programs. And Greg, you as well.
So we love hearing that. We love hearing from you guys. This is definitely a two-way street. We want to partner with you to, you're spending money with us, you're spending a lot of time and energy with us. And we want to make sure that, not only are you getting the most out of it, but that we're really helping students and teachers to not just take in that information, but also to share what they're learning. So that's definitely what we're here for, voice and choice. So it makes us happy when we hear your voice. So our colleagues from Palo Alto were not able to stay with us. We'll go ahead and share this information. We'll make sure that you get their information to to communicate with them if you have specific questions that they want to ask. Brian and Jen have been with us for a very long time, 2011. So we've known them for a long time. They've brought Read and Write into their special education department. And as they move more and more towards a universal design for learning, they have moved more towards a kind of a universal use of Read and Write. Palo Alto Unified currently is doing a district pilot of both Read and Write and Equatio. And I think our focus initially was, dyslexia, but we've definitely found much more movement towards that writing focus there in Palo Alto. So definitely a long relationship there. If you want to kind of check in with those folks, we'll make sure that you get their contact information. We have one final poll here. So Corey, if you don't mind launching that poll for us. We just want to make sure we're doing whatever we can to support you. And as we kind of start that poll, I just want to let you guys know I've been taking notes like mad here. We have had a bunch of amazing resources shared by our text helpers and also our wonderful clients. So we will be following up with an email that's going to have a recording of this webinar, which we'll make sure it gets captioned for you. And then we will also be sharing a number of these resources. And we definitely want to make sure that, if you have any questions of the Texthelp team or any of the other folks, we want to make sure that you get those. So I'm looking at the poll. I will also make sure for those of you that are new to exploring with us that you get access to the Texthelp Free for Teachers. And I do say we call it free for teachers, but it's free for educators. So that would be any of you who are case managers, paraprofessionals, district administrators. You can have free access to Read and Write as well. So we want to make sure that you get that. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll there. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. If you have questions, please do reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. We'll be following up with these slides and some information for you to be able to kind of connect with your colleagues. So we will do that as well. And we do anticipate being in touch with all of you after this webinar. If you are planning for summer school, if you're planning for next year's instruction, we have some exciting updates coming for Read and Write, especially in terms of the PDF reader that we'll be reaching out to share with those of you that have been with us for a while. And with that in mind, we will close things out for the day, but I wanted to thank our panelists again and just let you know we really appreciate you being part of this kind of user community. And it is our great joy and privilege to work with you. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we will be in touch soon.
Yay. Thank you, everybody.